Welcome to Dev Diary, the series where I try to make my own video games, and today we turn the clock back 20 years to revisit the time of the old Flash game. Now, if you're not familiar with Flash, for today's context, let's call it a game engine where a number of developers of today got their starts. It was also used to build more elaborate and interactive websites, which is where my personal experience comes from. Also, before we begin, I just want to say that today might be a bit more technical than usual. I never got to make my own actual Flash games back in the day, so expect some nerding out. With all that said, I wanted to recreate the Flash game era while also trying out a GameMaker feature that was introduced years ago, yet I never bothered to touch it until now. I am of course talking about the sequencer. Now, the sequencer is this animation tool built into GameMaker, and it is responsible for all the animations that you'll see today. Indeed, using GameMaker's sequence feature, I was able to make what I believe used to be called like puppets back in the day. And that is when characters are comprised of like various body parts that are all animated, mostly using tweening. In our case, the player is a little Kirby-like ball creature, and for the sake of nostalgia, everything from the stroke inconsistencies to the animation style was meant to convey that Flash game feeling. And surprisingly, GameMaker Sequencer reminds me a lot of how Flash used to work back in the day. Now, admittedly, I have not used modern animation tools like Adobe Animate or the like, but yeah, I was surprised to see how solid the sequencer actually was. Keyframing and tweening are both possible, with even the ability to switch to custom animation curves. And the best part is you can actually just incorporate functionality into the animation tracks themselves. It was very reminiscent of working with Flash back in the day. So this entire process of animating things was like almost riding a bike. Although admittedly, this system isn't without its faults. But first, let's go back to our game for a second. Today's experience is a simple top-down action game because honestly, this project was more about the visuals than the actual gameplay. So the player can move around with WASD, and this switches between the idle animation sequence and the walk cycle animation sequence, which led me to my first problem. Switching between animations has like a frame of lag where the animations swap, and getting around this was unnecessarily complicated when really this shouldn't be an issue to begin with. My second problem, to make a long story short, is actually incorporating the sequences into a game is again unnecessarily complicated. It's honestly one of the many things that I hope is addressed in the future because this stuff is cool, but the implementation is just too tedious. This is a lot of technical hurdles to jump through and just way too many limitations. In a way, in our sequences lies a hidden object. Now, this red baton looking thing is a placeholder for a weapon, which is swapped out if our player in fact picks up a weapon in the game world. Now, for the sake of simplicity, we've only got 3 weapons: a sword, a magical finger, and the player's fists of fury. Indeed, with no weapon, the player can still slug it out with their fists. A sword, however, will allow for a larger range of attack, but if precision is more the play, the magic finger will fire magic missiles in the aim direction. Each attack was animated specifically for their weapon, and again, was meant to mirror the old Flash days. And also, almost forgot to mention that if the attacks aren't enough, why not just chuck the weapon at the enemy instead? Now, the goal of the game is to collect all the stars spawned randomly on the level. However, these stars are guarded by a few different enemy types. We've got a cool ghost who don't need no weapons to hurt the player. Simply touching them will make it clear that these baddies should be avoided. Now, these red baddies, on the other hand, are a little less predictable. They're harmless for the most part until they decide to charge at the player. While charging, they will hurt if touched, so it's best to keep a healthy distance. And the final enemy type is a cute little worm. Again, pretty friendly until the players get too close, because then it'll throw a dangerous blood ball in the player's direction, which of course hurts if they make contact. And indeed, you already know, each enemy was animated lovingly in GameMaker Sequencer. Now, enemies when defeated will sometimes drop loot. This will either be health pickups in the form of squishy hearts or a weapon pickup, because I'm not sure if you noticed, but weapons have durability. Indeed, with every finger poke or sword strike making contact, these weapons will slowly break down. Now, luckily, the player can go ham with their fists at the risk of taking damage. and taking too much damage will result in a game over and the final animations of our project. First, the quote-unquote lose animation depicts the player's final moments before the game restarts, as well as the game over animation that plays over it. And this game over animation is a general sequence that changes based on the results. In fact, this game over animation actually has a ton of functionality tied to it. Like, it basically plays the opening effect when the level begins, then pauses itself. The rest is played when the game is over, and once the sequence ends, we restart the level to repeat the process. It's a nice little example of some of the things possible with sequences, but again, with all the positivity that I managed to find in working with GameMaker Sequencer, there's just still so many quality of life and functionality that could be added to make it better. Though, admittedly, there's still a lot about the feature that I haven't touched, so maybe I inadvertently made things harder for myself in some places. Only time and more practice will tell. But those are my thoughts, and now I'd love to hear yours. What did you think of this dive into sequences? Do you remember the days of like Newgrounds? And how'd I do at replicating the vibes? And heck, if you were there for those days of the Flash games, which were your favorite? Be sure to leave your thoughts and memories in the comments. And while you're at it, if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, and if you'd like to support the channel further, I am on Patreon. And finally, consider subscribing if you're new to the channel. But with that said, brings us to the end of today's Dev Diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.